Greek architecture allows us to look back in time and understand a culture that no longer exists, to see what was important to them, because many of the great architectural feats they accomplished still exist today and dominate many of the important buildings in our Western culture, including the Oslo Trading Building in Norway and our very own White House in Washington, D.C. In order to understand Greek architecture, we must first understand the context in which it was made. Greeks dedicated their architectural efforts to public buildings such as temples and the monumental gateway or processional entrance called the propylon. Temples dedicated to gods such as Zeus, Athena, and Apollo showcase great fluted marble columns of different widths and styles. These styles are called the three architectural systems, called orders, each with their own distinctive proportions and detailing. The orders are Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, and can be related to the Greek belief that everything starts in chaos, but with strength order can be found. With order, wisdom can grow, and with wisdom we can find beauty. Doric columns evolved first and include a vertical fluted column shaft, thinner at its top, with no base and a simple capital below a square abacus. The order uses alternating triglyphs and metopes below the pediment. The Doric order represents strength and can be found in buildings such as the temples of Zeus and Olympia, Apollo and Bacchae, Poseidon and Paestum, Italy, and most famously the Parthenon, which was the temple of Athena Parthenos meaning virgin, who is the Greek goddess of wisdom. The Parthenon was also home to a large statue of the goddess Athena, made of silver, ivory, and gold. Keeping statues of the gods in temples not only gave the god a presence, but the worshippers a sense of who they were honoring. Statues such as these would also be found in towns and other common places to give citizens an idea of who they were aspiring to be like, much like we have statues of political leaders and war heroes today. The next order to be developed was the Ionic, which added a base and volute or scroll capital to a slimmer, straighter column. The pediment accompanying this style is much more elaborate than that accompanying the Doric order. The Ionic order sometimes features relief sculptures below the pediment, which is a great improvement upon the rather plain-looking triglyphs and metopes. The Ionic order represents wisdom and can be found in buildings such as the Temple of Athena Nike, the Temple of Apollo at Didyma, the Erechtheum, which contains statues of Athena Polias, Poseidon, and Erechtheus. The final order formed was the Corinthian, which represented beauty. This order is similar to the Ionic, but topped by a more decorative capital of stylized acanthus and fern leaves, and includes a dental pattern, which comes from the Greek word for tooth below the pediment, which is less elaborate than the decoration of the Ionic order. This order represents beauty and is used in buildings such as the Temple of Olympian Zeus in Athens. With multiple temples for each god scattered around modern-day Greece and surrounding areas, it is apparent that the Greeks valued their religion highly, and that was a central part of their lives. Each god and goddess was responsible for different things. For example, Athena was the goddess of war and wisdom, while Hera was the goddess of marriage and the family. Besides having multiple temples for different gods, different cities had different patron gods, such as Athena being the patron goddess of Athens, where 3 temples were dedicated to her. Despite the obvious religious connections to the 3 orders and to ancient Greek architecture in general, many structures we can identify with today were innovated by the ancient Greeks, and even their designs used for temples can relate to important buildings today, even if they don't always serve a religious purpose. An example of a modern building using Greek architecture as a basis for its design is the White House in Washington, D.C., which is built in the style of an Ionic temple, although its columns aren't fluted and it has a dental pattern below the pediment. It also includes pediments above the windows, and even the interior has Greek influences, such as modified Doric columns and triglyphs and metopes in the cross hall, and yet more Ionic columns and pediments in the Oval Office. It is fitting that an important symbol of democracy was made in the style of the civilization who created democracy. The Ionic columns on the outside and in the Oval Office show the wisdom of the leader who lives within the building, while the cross hall showcases the strength of the nation. Greek style doesn't only apply to the White House, but can also be seen at domestic residences, the Oslo Trade Building, the courthouses almost anywhere, the Trevi Fountain in Rome, which features Corinthian columns, and many more. One of the more interesting examples is the Lincoln Memorial. Like the White House, which was built in the fashion of a Greek temple, the creator felt that a symbol of democracy should be based on a structure found in the birthplace of democracy. But it was taken one step further. It was modeled after the Parthenon, statue and all. The building has 36 exterior columns to symbolize the 36 reunited states at the time of Lincoln's death. The names of those states appear in the frieze above the columns. The statue of the president is depicted as a worn but strong individual who endured many hardships. His hands are positioned in a manner meant to display his two leading qualities. One of the president's hands is clenched, representing his strength and determination to see the war through to a successful conclusion. The other hand is more open, slightly more relaxed hand representing his compassionate, warm nature. This is mirroring how the ancient Greeks modeled their statues to be something for citizens to aspire to. Lincoln had many admirable qualities, and the monument may inspire others to be strong but compassionate like him. The Greek architecture is common in government buildings in the United States and all around the world due to its ties to democracy. The Greeks not only influenced our modern structures through style, but also invented ones that we may take for granted today. One such building that we may take for granted today, but was a great achievement for the ancient Greeks, was the amphitheater. Today we have microphones, and when we go to a concert, we are used to the space having good acoustics, both of which allow us to hear the band or speaker on stage. In ancient Greece, people experienced similar experience, but instead of having microphones and the layout of the amphitheater being common knowledge, they had invented this themselves. These people loved the arts, and many plays and poetry survive from this era. But if a speaker were to go before a large group of people, chances are those far away wouldn't be able to hear. So they took advantage of the sloping hillsides for terraced limestone seating in a partial ring. The limestone material of the seats provided a filtering effect, suppressing lower frequencies of voices, thus minimizing background crowd noise. Further, the rows of limestone seats reflected high frequency back toward the audience, enhancing the effect. This allowed an estimated 14,000 people to hear musicians and speakers even from the back row, unamplified. For the ancient world, this is amazing, and even by today's standards is quite a feat. Another structure easily taken for granted is the stadium. Today and back then, used for sports events of various kinds, and the basic construction is still very similar today. Stadiums were named after the distance, 600 feet or 180 meters, of the foot race they originally hosted, the stade or stadium. Seating was made of steps of marble or stone in a ring with divisions for easier access, and conduits ran around the track to drain off excess rainfall, and in Hellenistic times, vaulted corridors provided a dramatic entrance for athletes and judges. These structures were the homes for the first Olympic Games. For the first 13 games, the running race, for which the structure was named, was the only event. Even after other events were added, the stadium remained the most important and prestigious. The victors in the games received crowns made of different plants which varied by region and were worshipped as heroes, not too far a stretch from how sporting events occur today. It is incredibly important that we understand ancient Greek architecture for many reasons. It allows us to understand the ancient Greek way of life, as most small works of art no longer exist, leaving only ruins, temples, and other structures standing. These structures reveal that their culture revolved around religion, that they are extremely innovative, and that they influence our lives today very much. The ancient Greeks had many temples for each god and goddess, and used the basic architectural orders to convey the strengths and importance of said gods. For example, Athena's temples were generally made in the Ionic fashion, as she was the goddess of wisdom. These amazing people also invented the amphitheater, which allowed some 14,000 people watch plays and listen to music and the recitation of poems without amplification, due to their mastery of acoustics. They also invented one of the most famous multinational events, the Olympic Games, as well as where they were held. The stadium has become a staple of entertainment, as many sports events today occur in these structures, one of the most popular in this country being football. Not only did the ancient Greeks invent the amphitheater and stadium, which are now commonplace structures, but we still use the three architectural orders invented by the Greeks. We use the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns for much the same reasons the inventors did, to convey strength, wisdom, and beauty, as well as convey connection to the ancient Greek culture, as this culture was the birthplace of democracy and is often used in government buildings to show that they are democratic, as well as just having a building have art for just art's sake.